Rich Sander here, and this is Moral Misfits. Today we're talking to Jon Engel, president of the Secular Humanist Society of New York. And our today's topic is, we're out there. Hello, Jon. How are you doing?
Good, Rich. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I'm glad you're here today. Our theme today is we're out there. It's kind of like a double entendre, right? It's like
I know.
Out there.
Out there. Yeah, I guess we're out there.
Well, I guess with the moral misfits, you know.
Right. But the more important thing is that we are out there. People who are not religious, people who do not believe in deities. Whether they call themselves atheist, as I call myself, or agnostic, or, free thinkers. And I'm a secular humanist as well, of course. But we are there. And I think it's important for us for our neighbors and our friends and our families to know about us. I don't want to push myself on anybody. I'm not looking to convert anybody, so to speak. Although I don't mind having a rational conversation about it.
Well, I think you put the nail on the head is that we are out there. There are a lot of us that are secular minded, that don't in work, or if we're going to school, or if we're in our friends, neighbors, people we live around. We don't want to be afraid to call ourselves secular, atheists, agnostics, free thinkers. Those are important things to us, just as somebody who is religious, that their religion is important to them. But I think for us, and what we'd like to do with Moral Misfits in the future is that it's a place where people can gather in their community, wherever that might be. It might be in Oakland Park, Illinois, or Oakland Park, Texas, anywhere where they want to gather with their friends, their families, their neighbors, people in their communities, at a house or at a bar or restaurant or a community center, and gather and hang out and chat and get to know each other, and see the commonalities that we have, the values that we share. And Moral Misfits is that kind of thing for humanism, to really say, these are all the values that we hold, and these are all the things that we do and we do believe in and we do practice. But we want to show the rest of the world and that we are out there, because there are more of us out there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's an interesting starting point, because I think a lot of people, once they start becoming members of that kind of community, meeting together and talking together and things like that, there's a certain assuredness that can come with that, a certain idea that, yes, I'm not alone. And therefore, maybe I feel a little more comfortable talking to people about who I am, opening up a little bit more about who I am and what I believe, not in a way to jam it in anybody's face or anything like that. I certainly believe that people have the right to practice religion. I don't want to stop them, although I think that I do prefer a world where people use rationality and reason to solve not only personal problems, but the problems of our country and the problems of the entire earth. And I enjoy a give and take on that, as long as the other person is open and willing to it.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk more about that as we get a little bit later in the show, because I have some excerpts that we're going to use from previous interview or conversations I had. But it to the point of finding other people is the reason why 16, almost 17 years ago, we started Drinking with Atheists in New York City. And it's been going every Friday, even with COVID. Now it's just through Zoom, but we've been doing it every Friday for that long. And a lot of those people are my friends, and we enjoy that company. We do it every Friday, and it's something I look forward to. And it's something that brings me a lot of joy in my life, and I can share what I think about the world in a way that a lot of other people there are accepting, knowing that our starting point is not theism, not talking about how we view the world in that particular form, but we can start talking about science, what's not science. We had lots of arguments over what was science and what was not acceptable science. And we had a lot of fun. And, about a third of the people don't even drink or less, or more, I should say, that it's a social gathering. It's a social way to be able to do that. We're lucky in New York that it's a relatively secular place, although we've had people come up to us and say, oh, I've had this happen to me at work, where people, once I mentioned I was secular or an atheist or humanist, that they look down on those. But that is much more prevalent in the rest of the United States than it is, I would say, in big cities, especially New York City, because it's a relatively secular city. To everybody just goes about their business. Religion isn't just something they do, although on the subway we do get quite a bit of religion on the subway.
Yes, that happened to me once. I used to work on 127th Street in West Harlem, and for a nonprofit up there, and I would ride the subway back downtown to go home, and I was on the A train, which is and yes, Duke Ellington, so everybody can start to sing if they want to. But I was on the A train coming home, and it was one of those days. This is a long ride. The A train from 125th to 59th is like the longest unbroken ride on the subway you can take in New York City. And of course, the subway was moving at like 2 miles an hour. It was just creeping. It's almost worse than when it stops. It's just creeping along. And someone was edifying me about the glories of Jesus very loudly, very loudly. And I was tired. I had had a long day at work. But I didn't want to say bug off, buddy, because I don't like being rude and I don't like being shot. And this is, after all, New York City. So, and you never know. But at one point he started, like, right next to me, yelling, "Do you know what hell is like? Do you know what hell is like?" And I felt like turning to him and saying, "Well, I do now." Hell is riding on this train with you screaming about Jesus in my ear. So yes, there is some in your face in New York City. And I've run into situations myself where I've, when not acknowledging my atheism, it's been met with real consternation. So even though, yes, I think we are fortunate, I am fortunate to be in New York City, to be living in New York City, where there is, I think, much more acceptance of not just atheists, but varying people of different cultures, backgrounds, and religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And so I think that makes it a little easier for us here, but it's still, at times, can be difficult even in a place like New York City.
Well, I agree with you, and that's been my experience when I lived in New York City also, that most people are very easygoing about it, but it's not the case everywhere. And in my conversation back in last fall, I sat down and talked to Tony Davis, who has a book out, God Loves You, and other Christian dilemmas. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek sort of thing, kind of like Moral Misfits is a little tongue-in-cheek. So he wrote this book, but he's a military guy. And, sometimes it's difficult. You get put into a particular position to be able to almost like come out as an atheist or secular minded, or you don't believe, or as Ann said last week, I'm non-theistic. It's just not part of my worldview. But he's in this clip, he's talking about his experience and about, being out about it.
Well, you had to experience that a lot in the military, where people were believers and they were insistent on that, and you're an atheist now in the military and stuff. How'd that experience go for you in terms of how to deal with that? Because I'm sure you deal with that all the way till today in the military.
Absolutely. In fact, I had one experience. The last unit that I worked in, it's a mouthful. It's called the Special Operations Command, Joint Forces Command. We were a group of special operations observer trainers. We traveled around the world for about 180 to 200 days a year, going all over the world training counterterrorism and special operations forces. And we were on a training mission in Croatia, one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life, by the way. And my nickname is OB. And a guy that I didn't know walks up to me and goes, "Hey, are you OB?" I said, "I am." He said, "You know, you're a pretty brave guy." And I had no idea what he's talking about. I was like, "Okay, why?" He said, "Well, you're openly atheist and you're an Army officer." I was like, "That takes bravery?" He goes, "Yeah, it does," because, and he's kind of looking around, making sure who's listening. He said, "Yeah, a lot of people won't admit that, not in the military, because the military tends to be a fairly religious organization. And, we have chaplains in every unit. Many times events are preceded or closed with an invocation of some sort. I really, again, going back to this situation with the chaplain, for a variety of reasons, I only shared one story about this chaplain. I decided at that point that my life was going to be very different. Up to that point, I had really started questioning my belief. I probably was already an atheist, although I didn't really like using that word because I thought it had a lot of the baggage with it that a lot of people today think, that I claim to know for an absolute fact there is no God, or I worship the devil, or I hate God, I'm mad at God. I didn't realize, it just means theists have not met their burden of proof in convincing me of their claims. And I also thought, by the way, I called myself an agnostic. I didn't realize, I thought those terms were mutually exclusive. Now I call myself an agnostic, atheist, anti-theist. I don't know if there's a God. I don't believe there's one, but I don't think there's one. But I also believe that the net harm of religion outweighs any good that ever comes from it. But when that situation happened up until that happened with the chaplain, I had, if someone asked me about God or about going to church, I would make excuses. I was, I'm still a believer. I still have a relationship with Jesus, but it's a personal relationship. Or I haven't found a new church yet, but yeah, I'll get around to it. After that, I became fairly unapologetic. And like many new atheists, I was probably a little bit more in people's face than I should have been for a period. I got over that fairly quickly, but to this day, I will not approach strangers. If I see somebody reading a Bible at a coffee shop, I'm not going to go up and say, "Hey, look, that's," and point out the flaws in the book. I would never do that. But if someone wants to approach me, I welcome it. I enjoy it, and I love to decisively engage with people that want to tell me about the truth of their message.
Sometimes that happens in New York, and sometimes that happens in the military.
It's happened at some surprising places. I mean, growing up in the Bible Belt, and I have a house down in Virginia. I lived there for a long time. It was fairly frequently I would be reading something at a coffee shop, like maybe a Dawkins book or Hitchens or something like that, and I would have somebody walk up to me and ask me about it, and that was just the excuse to start the God talk. Well, you do realize that what's going to happen to you if you don't come back to Jesus, and we don't want that to happen to you because we love you, that kind of thing. But this happened in South Korea, which that shocked me, that I would have Koreans who, and of course you can't paint any group of people with a broad brush and say Koreans are like this. Some Koreans are, some are not, some are different ways. But as a culture, they tend to be a little bit more less likely to talk to a complete stranger than Americans might be. So very often in a coffee shop or a subway, most people are just looking straight ahead, kind of minding their business. But several times I had people, complete strangers, just walk up to me and, "Hey, do you love Jesus?" in English. I had one guy on a subway walk up and said, "Hey, I have a question." And I thought he wanted to practice his English because that happens a lot there. I said, "Sure." And I was with a lot of my buddies, and it became quite funny, actually. And he said, "What came first, the chicken or the egg?" I said, "Well, that's easy." He goes, "Yeah, the chicken." I go, "No, the egg." Because fish were laying eggs for millions of years before the birds ever evolved, So, yeah, the egg came first. You didn't say chicken egg, you just said egg. So eggs came before chickens. He goes, no, the chicken. Because Jesus said, I'm like, well, stop. let's get back to the chicken and the egg. And he kept trying to shift it to Jesus. And I'm like, no, we're going to finish the chicken and the egg conversation first. We're going to start talking about Jesus now.
I don't know what parable it is that Jesus talked about the chicken and the egg.
I
don't know
yeah.
what that was.
We
Maybe
never
that's
got,
one of the Gnostic versions of the Bible. I don't know.
and we never got that far because I wouldn't let him get beyond the chicken and the egg because I insisted that eggs came first and he insisted chickens came first. So we had to agree to disagree on that one. And then eventually he disengaged, which is something I often see when people want to talk about Jesus. Mm-hmm. They'll talk about it all day long until you start talking back. And then it's, I got to go. It's kind of time for my Bible meeting or something, you know.
So John, Tony is sitting there talking about the chicken and the egg. As I said in the video, it's like I don't remember a parable about that. I think they're trying to make some particular point that God came first or something like that. That something existed before all this, and I don't know. I'm not going to have that particular conversation with somebody about that if they're just not going to talk about what the real science is about it. And but it was funny that he was talking about the chicken and the egg. It's like, I want to finish that conversation.
Well, that can happen. I mean, you don't know, especially when someone approaches you sort of blind, like the story he related about the chicken and the egg. Someone, hey, can I talk to you about? When someone does that, you never really know, are they really interested in an actual give and take sort of conversation, or or are they not? I run into something like that in my life, not that infrequently. I guess I must look Jewish. I was raised Jewish, Reform Jewish. I am now Reformed Jewish. They're not the same thing. But I've had people, sometimes there are, especially ultra-Orthodox, the Hasids on the street of New York City or something, will say to you, are you Jewish? And I've always been sort of confounded about how to answer that, because I consider myself culturally and ethnically Jewish, but I am not religious. And if you say, and I know that if you say yes, they'll say, oh, come, have you prayed today? Come pray with us. And, but I don't like the idea of saying no, because I don't like denying that aspect of who I am. And so I figured it out finally. At one point I was on an elevator, and a young man in Hasidic garb said to me, are you Jewish? And what I replied to him was, do we know each other? And he was taken aback, no. And I said, well, then why are you asking me about a stranger, about my religion? And so he just, oh, sorry, and backed off. And that seemed to, but that's just for street sort of things. I do welcome, though, conversation with people who can accept my atheism and maybe want to talk about their religious beliefs, and we can go back and forth, etc. And have, I love those kinds of discussions. I find them very interesting, but you have to know sort of in advance that the person you're talking to is ready for that and is willing to engage in that kind of give and take.
Well, I think that's what Tony was talking about, is that he's unabashed about his atheism, and that the guy that came up to him in the military saying, oh, you're brave. And it's like, why is that a thing? But it goes to show that the military, or certain parts of the military, is a little too overly religious, and it really doesn't belong there. It's a civil organization. It's a government organization that many people of many faiths and us that don't have a faith should feel comfortable in serving our country and doing it that way. I've never served, but I think that people who are secular should be able to serve along those people who are religious, but it should not feel uncomfortable to be without religion, with being an atheist or agnostic or skeptic or whatever and stuff. So he mentioned that, and also the story about running into people and them wanting to have a conversation. But I've had very similar things where the conversation starts, but once I start asking them questions, it's like, well, I got to go now, or and
it makes you wonder, did they really want the conversation?
Yeah.
Because, or did they just want to proselytize to you, which is probably more likely the case.
Yeah.
But again, it can be difficult, especially if you don't know somebody. And so to have that give and take with some people can be fraught with possible holes in the conversation, fraught with possible tripwires where people might get upset. And I'm not looking to upset anybody. Understand, I feel the way I feel and I'm open about it, and I'd like to be as open about it as I can. But I'm not looking to, hurt anybody's feelings. I'm not looking to make anybody uncomfortable in the least. But I also question why anybody would be uncomfortable just because we have this difference. There are so many other things that we could be similar about.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there are a lot of things that we do share, and I hope that Moral Misfits is a place that when we do talk about these ethics and these morals, and I don't necessarily like the word moral, but it's in our name. It's kind of tongue in cheek that way. But in this particular case, with our show, we want to talk about the ethics, and there is an awful lot that we do share. I just want to be able to share those things in a way that's more comfortable. And I think that there's probably a curve in how many people become, open about it, that it gets to be more socially acceptable. Like in New York, there's more, so it's more socially acceptable. Where if you go to some rural area or some suburban areas, it's less so. And I was looking at the latest research from Pew, because Pew does the most research about this, and they did it in 2004 and 2007 about religiosity. And in 2014, so they'll be doing it again in 2021, and I'm sure the trend's going to be going this direction, because there was a big jump with those people who are unaffiliated. So unaffiliated is 22.8% back in 2014. And that was just as large as the largest religious denominations.
Right.
And that overall religious people are about 70%. I would not be surprised that when they come out with their research after next year is that would be down in the low 60s. I would not be surprised. And those that are, I'm just looking at this on the website, is that people that say that they're an atheist. So these are people that are unabashed.
Right.
To come out and say that it's 3.1%, and those who say they're agnostic is 4%. So that's over 7% of the population that are already willing to say in a survey that they are atheist agnostic. But it's a number of people, I think, in the future will be able to say that if more of us are able to congregate and tell other people and become more comfortable with that. And some of that comes with numbers,
Yes.
that I've been continuously surprised when people show up at Drinking with Atheists on Friday nights for the first time, and they say, I had no idea that you guys existed. I had no other idea that other people felt the same way I do. And that's what the theme of today's show is. We're out there. We just got to find a way to find each other and get around to each other.
I think there's a certain amount of parallel with the gay rights movement, because I think that people in this country today are much more accepting, I think that's pretty clear, of gay people, LGBTQ people, than they were previously, for many years. And one of the reasons was the visibility of gay people. That, when you come out, people had seen the comedian Ellen DeGeneres and thought she was funny and thought she was this and that. And then when she comes out and says, hey, I'm gay, that's like, wow, gay people can be somebody I like. And I think it can be the same thing with atheists and agnostics and other, non-religious folk, is that once when we come out and they get to know us and they get to learn about us and they get to see that, that we're nice people, maybe they know us first, but then they know us first, but then they find out that, oh yes, well, I'm not religious, I'm an atheist. that that can maybe helpfully change a few minds. I used to think of those people as, I don't know what, devil horns and things like that. Although it's a little strange that in that sense, but I used to think of people that way, an atheist that way. But now I know that my neighbor or my coworker is an atheist, and I know that they're an all right woman. They're okay. They helped me out with this, or they helped me out with that. And, again, slowly changing minds. But I think that's what happens and is still happening. Of course, we haven't, reached in this country total acceptance of LGBTQ people, but we're getting closer. And so I think that a similar transference can happen with the atheist freethinker community, that once people get to know us and know that we're there and know that, again, we're out there, and once they know it and know that we're part of their community and know us as people, as individual human beings. I mean, my atheism is just a part of who I am. Yeah. Yes, it is a part of who I am. I don't want to deny it. I don't want, but it's only a part of who I am. There's so much more. And so, and I think that's true with people who are religious too. That's part of who they are. Again, it can be a bigger part or a small part depending on their beliefs. But I think that we can find common ground. I'll tell you, for example, I know that there are many people in this country who have progressive political beliefs who come to those beliefs through their religion. And so I feel like I have progressive political beliefs. I don't come to it through my religion, but that's okay. I can still make common cause with them, because if we both believe that everybody should have the right to vote, for example, then we can work together on that, even if we came to that belief from different viewpoints.
Well, I think that is important to understand, and if you drill down the Pew Research more, there's another part where they ask, where do you get your ethics from? Where do you get your foundation from? And it was interesting, and I'm gonna see if I can do this correctly and stuff. So they break it up of that people get it from their religion. They get it either from philosophy and reason. They get it through just common sense. They get it through science, or they just don't know, exactly where it comes from. It might just be handed down from family or other things. But there's another category. And if you take it in 2007, it was 33% of the people had said that they get their ethical viewpoint of the world through their religion. But 11% said science and reason. 45% said common sense, which I thought was fun to know, and that 9% get it from science. So if you take between the science and the philosophy and the common sense, which are a big part of being a humanist or secular minded and stuff, you're talking about 65%. That's 2/3 of the population. And I think that's lost on a lot of people, is that they get their ethics that way. And I think that we can speak to that as humanists, that we do use a bit of philosophy. We do use a lot of common sense, and science is really helping us understand our human condition and how we can be better people, and how we can treat other people better, and how we can improve the world that we live in. And if you're a person out there that thinks the same way as we're talking about right now, there's a number of national organizations that you can go to. And John, you run the Secular Humanist Society of New York. There's a National American Humanist Association. There is a Center for Inquiry. There is Atheist Alliance, American Atheists. There's Ethical Culture in many places, and the Ethical Union, which is national, and you can go to their website. So there are these national organizations, and hopefully in your community you can find a local community that has one of these aspects to it, whether they're atheist or science minded or skeptic minded. I think skeptic as a good word, as that I just don't take what people give me for face value. When people say, well, you believe that, right? I was like, well, I don't know. What does the science actually say about it? Right. But to be secular minded and to use a worldview of what really matters and how does that matter to other people and how does that make them feel and how does it make me feel and can we do better? I think it is important, and we should help other people find us, find other people like us, so they don't have to feel quite so alone.
Yeah, I think so. And to what you were saying before, with regard to ethics and where you get your ethics, and I think there's so much misconception about atheist people in so many ways. People will ask things like, right and wrong. How do you know right from wrong? And it's, well, I don't necessarily have to read it in a book or be told what's right from wrong, etc. As you mentioned, we get our ethics from various places. And when people say, well, what is the meaning? What's the meaning of life for you? What is your purpose in life? It's very simple. My purpose in life is to make myself a better person and make the world a better place. And I know that, my ability to move the needle on the world is very limited. I'm only one person, but you can still do little things. It's one of the things I've tried to teach my sons is that, if we're by example and also by telling them, we're out on the street. I was walking with my son the other day and some guy, a UPS guy, was pulling this huge thing of packages and boxes on a dolly, and it started all falling over. And I said, let's go help that guy. So we did. And, not because I felt that, this way I'll get into heaven. There's no ulterior motive here. It's just that it makes the world a better place. Maybe it puts a little smile on that guy's face. Maybe that guy so all of a sudden starts thinking, hey, people aren't really so bad. I had a good experience today. Someone who had no, obligation to help me did help me. So, I think that's something that's important for people to know, that we get out, that we can be very ethical people. People also talk about things like, well, what about awe? Because some people are awed by God. Don't you want to be awed by things? It's like, I am awed by things. Science awes me. I think it was the physicist Richard Feynman who said, just because I know what makes a rainbow doesn't make it any less beautiful. I experience awe and wonder and joy without the need for me to believe in any supernatural things or to believe in any deity or anything. There's so much of the world that I can get, so many positive things about the world that I can get that I don't for me, require any kind of religious beliefs.
Yeah. And for me, I've been lucky enough to do a lot of traveling. I've seen a lot of national parks. I've been coast to coast and in the Rockies and the Smoky Mountains and nature in many different forms. And I get goosebumps and awed about it and about how it's there. I don't think that it was intentional. I don't think that somebody made it so I would be awed by it. Right. I just awe at, because it does exist. I'm amazed that we're human animals and we're able to walk around this world and do many things with our hands and feet and do a lot of things. I'm amazed by it. And what dismays me sometimes is that some people want to say, well, it's only this way and right. You can only believe this way. And that some people can feel ostracized or outcast or felt bad for not feeling those things. And I talked to Mandesa Thomas. She runs another national organization with many chapters throughout the United States called Black Nonbelievers. Mm-hmm. And there's a community that really needs her help and needs her work and to get at it. But she's not afraid of saying who she is. And here she is talking about it.
I encourage people to be unapologetic as I am. I contend that people should be open as much as possible. We understand that isn't always the case for everyone. And we want to support that as well. We want to support people in their journeys, whether they are still questioning religion, or whether they are completely done with it and they just need that like-minded support and networking, which can turn into so many good things from that. And so that was really the focus of, there just has to be more of us out here. And so we didn't want to wait for other people to try to come to us. We wanted to build up that network, to start building up that community.
So you see yourself as an atheist, right?
Oh, absolutely. I identify as an atheist, yes.
How about humanist?
Humanist as well. I consider myself a skeptic as well. Secular humanist as well. You know, that I do think that there are good things that can be done without a divine premise, that we do good things for the sake of being good as human beings, and that we can identify what is wrong in the world and within our communities and try to fix them.
In terms of your humanistic viewpoint and stuff, how do you see those things that you're looking at the world and making those determinations without doing it from a religious viewpoint?
Well, I consider myself very, very fortunate that I wasn't raised or wasn't indoctrinated with belief, which means that I never just took anything on faith, or I never just accepted something simply because it was told to me. I always tried to practice an evidence-based and also verifiable point of view, and also actions, meaning that I'm going to do some research and I'm going to make informed decisions, come to informed conclusions, and also and based on what has been proven to work, also the mistakes that some people have made, and errors, and what we can learn from them. Actually, you know, of appreciating the scientific method, that it doesn't resolve itself in being right, but that you know, you take something, you test it. If it's right, it's right, and it's wrong. If it's wrong. You go back to the drawing board, and that there's always something new to be learned. And that, so that informs my humanistic perspective, and also being able to look at things on a case-by-case basis, that we don't just paint things with a broad brush, that there are no absolutes really in this life and in the things that in our everyday lives and the things that we go through, that everything needs to be assessed and sometimes reassessed, not to the point where we're driving ourselves insane, but you know, just
short drive for most of us.
Yes, but it is important for us to continue to make informed decisions, look at things from different perspectives, and then come to our decisions and conclusions from there.
So Jon, Mandesa Thomas is an amazing person.
Yes, she is.
She's really talking about how there are the struggles in her community, and how being unabashed out there, that we are nice people, that we are finding reason and looking at the world in a way that we can understand it and be better in that community, or in the world, for all of us to be in the world that way. And it's amazing that she's been able to really take this organization and get into a community that really desperately needs it, and bring those people to a point where I'm sure that she runs into this all the time. And she actually mentioned it, that she runs into people saying, it's like, I had no idea that there are other people out there that felt the way I felt.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that many of us in the free thought community, we're subject to stereotypes and prejudice. A lot of it is just looking within yourself and say, oh yeah, I thought this. Why did I just think that? But I think there's a thought that African-American people, that Black people tend to, that they're religious. I mean, I think a lot of people would say, really? There were Black atheists? I didn't think so. I thought they were all churchgoers. And it's like, hello, that's a stereotype, you know, and you don't really believe in stereotypes. And so, you know, let's keep that mind open. You know, keep that mind open, and to realize that yes, it's important to, again, you know, we know this. And one of the reasons that we know this is that we saw Mandesa Thomas on your show. And she's out there. And so that, you know, that gives me the, you know, understanding that, yes, you know, I should look inside myself. You always want to self-correct. I mean, that's the way I feel, because I know that I go the wrong path sometimes. And so, you know, want to self-correct. And you see that. So yes, I think supporting people in their journey is really important. And being unapologetic is interesting and important. I can tell you that just a quick anecdote. A couple years ago, I went to a dinner party. Someone who lives in my building invited my wife and I, and there were about 10 people there. And apart from the hosts, I didn't know anybody. Although a few people lived in my building and I knew them to say hello to, but that was about it. And so somebody asked me, these old people all knew each other, but I didn't know any of them. They didn't know me. So someone, as usual, would ask, what do you do? And one of the things I said was, well, I'm the incoming president of the Secular Humanist Society of New York. And somebody who was there, a woman said, sort of half under her breath, she said, I hope you're not one of those God haters. And, this was an interesting thing. So how do I respond to that? I mean, part of me wanted to respond to that by saying something like, well, look, you don't believe in the tooth fairy, but you don't hate the tooth fairy, do you?
Exactly.
But I didn't want to make her uncomfortable. I didn't want to make my host uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I just sort of said, look, I don't really hate anybody. But the upshot was interesting because it goes back to what we were talking about before, was that, I made a point of talking to this woman over the course of the evening about nothing to do with religion or atheism, just basic whatever. And by the time I was leaving, she was like, oh, it was so nice to meet you. And she lives in my building. I've seen her. She'll stop and chat with me. How are you? How are things going? And things like that. And I'm hopeful that maybe in this instance, the fact that I was out about who I am, but not in any kind of belligerent way, just out about who I am, maybe I made a convert, not a convert to atheism. I would doubt that would happen, but a convert to the understanding that there's nothing to fear from atheists, that they're just like everybody else in most ways, but they have a different view of the world and how it came about and how it works. And they can, I can accept that. I don't have to be afraid. Maybe next time someone relates to this woman, oh, I'm an atheist, I can only hope that she would not be like afraid or thinking, oh, this is, do I want to spend an evening with this person? This is, this is a horror. What are they going to do to me? That she'll, oh yeah, I have known someone like that before and they were an okay guy.
Yeah, I think it's important that you had mentioned that, because we are nice people. And it's one of the great things that I've seen in the secular community is that when we do gather and we're talking with each other, that we have people from all backgrounds,
Yes,
all income stratas, we have people that do all kinds of different work to earn a living, and we all can treat each other equally, and that we spend the time doing that. And you're president of the Secular Humanist Society in New York, and you have a lot of people that come there, and what you're doing is amazing and helping out the community as a whole. And we hope that other people will step up to the plate, so to speak, and help their community to gather and to socialize. And that I think over time, we can gather more people. So the statistics that Pew Research will see in the future, there'll be more people that are coming out. There might even be a category in the future, just humanist, because in Europe, they define, not necessarily atheists and agnostics, but people who are humanist. In some countries, it's almost 50% of the people identify themselves as humanist. And that they get their ethics that way.
I think that's a very good point, Rich, because when you look at those statistics that you were talking about before from Pew Research, and you say how many people identify as atheist and agnostic, I think it was 3 and 4% or something like that. Yep. The truth is probably significantly greater than that, because we know that when people take surveys or ask questions by a pollster or something like that, part of their answer at times has to do with what they think that person will think of them. We know that when it comes to race relations in this country, the race relations probably are not as good as they seem, because when a pollster says, how do you feel about living next to, say, an African-American person, and a white person may respond to that, oh, I have no problem with it. But because that's what they know is the right thing to say, even though they don't necessarily feel that way. So in this way, it's sort of a reverse of that, where I think people might be asked, are you an atheist or are you agnostic? or what religion are you? And, they'll know that they won't be looked down on if they say Methodist, if they say Episcopalian, that's okay. They know that'll be okay, but they're afraid, well, if I say atheist, maybe even this person who's asking me these questions will think less of me.
Well, I remember reading this book. I'll have to put it down in the notes below, but it was by a Google analyst. And he left Google and wrote a book about it because he took all these analytics about what people said in like surveys and compared it to like their Google searches, their online searches. What are they looking for? What are they looking at? And, we can talk about porn real quick, is that a lot of people, say that they don't watch porn, but the statistics are, a lot of people do, and I think that if we have the Pew taking a survey and maybe somebody's talking on the phone, they're saying, okay, what am I? They might have family members there. They don't want to say an atheist or an agnostic or unaffiliated right there. And having another 15% of the people saying that they're unaffiliated, how many of them are spiritual? They think that there might be something out there, or how many of those people are just unafraid to say that I don't think there's something out there, and I live my life in ways that are either philosophically important or common sense or science. I would like to see a culture that values that more. I will say that in terms of how I view religion and culture is that I want people to be more open about being able to say that they are secular and that they're not looked down or put upon or have to shy away from it at the office or in a grocery store or in the community as a whole. If somebody gets ostracized, there are too many religions that if you are not a devout believer and you are not 100% adamant about being a believer, that you're kicked out and ostracized. And I don't think that, if people are religious, I'm not ostracizing them and saying, I'm never going to speak to you again.
Right.
Politics is maybe a different story, but not for religious reasons,
Right. That's more for ethics reasons too. I've heard it said that everybody has three aspects to their personalities or to themselves. There's the public part, which things that everybody knows, things that may be on your, LinkedIn profile or something like that, where you went to school or, what you do for a living or things like that. And then there's the private self that people, close to, maybe, I have hypertension. I don't put it on my LinkedIn profile, but the people who know me, my family, some friends, whatever, they know that. And then there's the secret self, the things that only you know about yourself and that you're really not willing to divulge. And hopefully for people who keep their atheism in their secret self, they're at least be willing to go to the private self with that. Even if they're not ready to do it publicly yet, it may be a step they can take from having their atheism or agnosticism in their secret self to at least being able to feel comfortable with family and friends and things like that. Again, maybe you're not ready to tell the entire world, but that step can come next. But at least you're ready to tell the people that are close to you and people, friends, etc., and things like that. And again, that helps to break down that barrier, to break down that wall of, I can't let anybody know this because in my society, people who think the way that I really do deep down think are ostracized and not accepted.
And I think that's definitely something that I can empathize with people who are struggling to come out as secular minded, because I struggled with it. It took me a while. I grew up religious. I was a youth minister. I was active in the church. I was a believer until I was 30, and then I slowly got out of it. And by the time I was 40, I'm an atheist now. This is how I view the world, and I'm able to take actions based off of my understanding, and it's been so much better for me, I think, for me personally. But I empathize with those people that are struggling, and there might be in a community that's that's really frowned upon and thought poorly of. It's going to be part of us as secular people to gather and show more people that we do exist, to create that perception that there are more people, because there are more people like us. But there's a point where there's going to be a tipping point where, just like you said with the analogy of the gay movement, is that you get to a particular point where, okay, it's acceptable for people to tell other people that they're gay, and and people don't think too ill of it. Some places in the country, it's still not okay to say that because of what they believe. Would like to see that change, but it is kind of a numbers game in a way that, as more people come out and are open and gather as secular, humanist, or atheist, agnostic, science-minded people, as we gather and we say it's all right to live our world this way, and our belief structure is around understanding the world and doing better in it. Once that's accepted more often, I think we're going to have more people, and it's going to be easier for other people. So, like, your involvement in the Secular Humanist Society as president is helping the cause. And that's so important. I really appreciate you doing that. I think that it's a service that you're going to do for a while, and really help out the organization and help out the community as a whole. That's important stuff. And some of us have to take our turn. I started drinking with atheists with a couple friends, almost 17 years ago. It's like, but it's fun. It's something I enjoy. And we've seen other drinking with atheists throughout the United States and the world get together because they like the idea. It's an opportunity for people to get together and be 100% social. There's no agenda. There's no thing. Moral Misfits, we want it to be a little different. We do want it to be highly social, that people gather at least, starting at least an hour before the show, that they watch us for a little while, and that they hang out afterwards and get to know their friends and family. And hopefully it's over a meal, because we know a meal is a great place for people to chat and to get to know each other. And, I like to cook, so I like to be able to provide something that people like to eat. So I think those are things that we can do. And there's national organizations that people can link up with. They're local if you search for them. And I hope that more and more people find this in the future. So I wanted to say thank you while you're here, because a lot of times it's a thankless job to be president of anything,
Yeah, listen, I know. I was drafted, by the way, just in case you think
I voted for you. I don't know.
I was drafted. So, but yes, I do think that's really so important for the people to be out there doing the initial work. It's like the people who organize. We've been making this analogy a few times, like the early gay pride parades. And today, again, before the virus shut so many things down, today, the gay pride parade in New York City is just a big deal. There's so many people there, and they love it, and people,
it's so much fun.
You go to it, it's fun. It doesn't matter if you're gay or you're straight or anything like that. It's just, you understand that, in a lot of ways, you're celebrating your gay and your trans friends, and and that's fine too. You don't have to actually have those feelings to celebrate that. And so I think the people who are going out there now, I think of, you've mentioned me, I think of John Rafferty, my predecessor as president, the president emeritus of the Secular Humanist Society of New York, who, was doing this years before I was, thinking of doing it. And I've been an atheist for pretty much as long as I can remember. It was, pretty much, I'm a very cut and dried kind of person. I look at things as, obviously there's nuance in things, but I also, look for, okay, let's separate the talk, the chatter, and look at the reality.
Is that the lawyer in you, or?
That is definitely the lawyer in me. And one of the things that it's funny because it's one of the reasons why I'm so impatient, and I'm working on being more patient, but is because I like to cut to the chase and cut to the heart of it. You know, they talk about, that's what, you know, in law school, when you read a case and the professor calls on you and you're shaking in your boots if you're first year. And he says, well, what was that case about? You know, what was that case about? What that means is, let's separate all the yada yada and get to what was it really about. And so I think that's you know, again, that's the lawyer in me, and that's something that's that I believe in. And that's really important, is, you know, is looking at that. And so for me, when, you know, I majored in 20th century European history in college, and I took a class that was called the Psychology and History of the Holocaust. And to me, that was sort of like, I knew that I really wasn't much of a believer, but to be honest, I hadn't really thought about it that much. But then once I saw that, I said, well, you know, once I became learned about the Holocaust, I said, there can't possibly, if there is a deity, a God that allowed this to happen, then I will not worship that deity.
Yeah.
I don't think that deity exists. I really don't.
Exactly.
But if it does, it's a lot different than what I was told about in Hebrew school, you know, because well, how could a deity allow something so horrible to happen if they have the power to? So either the deity is a lot different than you think it is, or it probably just doesn't exist. But either way, I will not, you know, I will not worship, you know, and so that's when I really became, you know, sure that I was an atheist. Although becoming more active in like the community, that happened to me much later. It was actually my father was one of the plaintiffs in a landmark Supreme Court case that outlawed school prayer. It was called, from 1962, called Engel versus Vitale. And after my father died, I'm not going to say passed away, after my father died, oh God, how long is it? About now? It's, oh boy, it's about 10, 12 years ago already. My younger brother said to me, you know, I think one of us ought to be out there telling people, talking about the case. And he said, and I think it should be you. I think part of that's because I'm a lawyer, so I understand the legal aspects of it probably more than he would. And so I started doing that. And then one of the organizations I pitched, hey, you want me to speak to you, was the Secular Humanist Society. So once I got there and started, you know, so, you know, I did my thing, I did my presentation, and then I said, well, they have other events. Maybe I'll go check this out. Maybe I'll go, because these people seem interesting, you know, and maybe I'll check that out. And I don't know, something happened. I blinked my eyes and I was the president. but regardless of that.
I think I was at that event. It was a free thought day for the Secular Society, and you gave a presentation. I may even ask a question or something, but I remember meeting you at there, and you know, now that you're president of the organization, you know, see that it's in good hands right now. You know, Rafferty ran it for a long time, and we've had him on and talked to him quite a bit. And, you know, he did his turn, and it's your turn now. And I think a lot of people don't understand that, it takes effort and energy to do these things. And you know, people should step up every once in a while and kind of help organize things for a while. But, you know, we need to have fun things. We need to have things that go on. And, you know, I want to get back to New York a little bit, because a lot of people don't, you know, you can go to be on a baseball team or a bowling team, and that's a secular event. You know, that's not, you know, you know, something to do. But in New York, we have these marches and parades, and, you know, I went to a science march. That was a lot of fun. Everybody's, you know, pro science. That was a lot of fun. But there's three really big things in New York that a lot of people are, in my mind, it's the three biggest parades. And it's the Gay Pride March. And last year that was the world one, so they had even more people. It lasted 6.5 to 7 hours long. It was humongous and very long. tons of fun. The other one is a Halloween parade, which, everybody gets dressed up and anybody can get in the parade. You don't have to get a permit. You don't have to do whatever. It's very egalitarian and it lasts for hours and hours and hours. It's a lot of fun. And the other one is the Puerto Rican Day Parade. That is hilarious and lots of fun. Those are the three really big events and they're totally secular. There's nothing to do with religion for those things. And they're a lot of fun. And, we want a world full of these kind of fun things that people can do and enjoy and not have to be, subject to the some kind of religiosity behind it or associated with that. That's up to the individual and they can practice with the people they want to practice with. And that's the thing that I want to get out to everybody is that I've never come across somebody who was in our groups and organizations and people I met that said, I don't like religious people. I don't want to be around them. I don't think that they should think that way. Everybody without question has always said, if they want to believe that, they want to believe that. I just don't want it in the schools. I don't want it in the government. And I don't want to have to be forced to be at whatever business I work at or where I go to as a consumer. I just don't want to deal with that. And if you want to do it outside of all that, then that's great. That's up to you to decide. But I want to end kind of on this is that with Moral Misfits, we want to be a place where people can come and gather. Right. The show is fun. It's been great talking to you, but we want people to be able to come together and hang out and socialize. And they use Moral Misfits as a reason to gather and to watch us for a little while. I wouldn't even put it past them to put us on mute for a while, if they're socially and gathering and talking and having a good time, if it gets them there, that's a great thing. And it's something that I wish that that people will do in the future, and that they will gather, and we'll have all kinds of experts, and we'll have all kinds of people on that will talk about different points of philosophy, about science, and around the humanistic ethics. And there's just so much to talk about, and whether it comes from common sense or philosophy or science, we want to talk about those things and show that there's a great way to see the world. And for us as secular minded people, we share an awful lot of that with people who are religious. Yeah. We just, certain parts of it we don't share.
Yeah. And I think that the idea of community is so important. And I think that's why I think what you're doing with the Moral Misfits is great. Because I think that idea of community is so important. People that people that you can talk to, people you feel comfortable with. It's really I think I might have mentioned this before, but I think it really helps people to come out because they know, hey, I'm not alone. I can come out, I can be open about who I am because one of the reasons is I know I'm not alone, because I know that I have this community that I'm part of, that I feel comfortable with. And so it makes me feel more comfortable in my own skin. And when you're comfortable in your own skin, you don't mind other people seeing it.
Yep. Well, I want to thank you again for your time today. And it was very interesting. And we got to talk about a lot of different stuff. And one thing I just want to end on for everybody is we're out there.
We are. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, John.
Take care.